Like, come to your
Yeah.
house, that's really creepy.
Yeah.
Like, meet them in a parking
That's a
lot.
good idea.
Of
course, it's too late because I already gave him my address.
Oh my gosh, Mr. Potter.
Time to move.
I feel like you should have thought that.
Yeah, I didn't think of it. Okay. Here is an example of being able to play with numbers. So let's just fictionally pretend there's 3, 6, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. So every one of you gets married. We now have 14 people married. And now these two rows get divorced. Okay? So the score is now 14-6. 14-6. Are there more marriages that end successfully or unsuccessfully? Keep in mind that our definition of successful marriages, they stay together. I'm well aware that sometimes the successful marriages is the one that ends. That's a good decision. I get it. But let's just go with an asterisk. Successful marriages, mom and dad stay together. Who's winning? Successful is winning.
Oh, just kidding.
It's 14 marriages and then 6 divorces. So there've been 14 marriages, but now 6 divorces. So it's 14-6. You get me? You follow me so far? And now you 6 get remarried. Okay. Now what's the score? There've been
14 marriages. 14,
there are 14 marriages and 6 divorces, and now you get divorced again. Same 6. So now there have been 14 marriages and 12 divorces, and now you get married again. There are still 14 marriages, and now you get divorced again. Now we've had more divorces than successful marriages. And that's the myth of marriage. How many of you have ever heard of this weird stat that more people get divorced? There are more divorces than marriages. Here it is, most marriages end in divorce. But that's a little deceiving. Most people who get married stay married. It's just the ones that keep getting divorced that ruin the curve. Shame, shame. Okay, that's what's going on. Yes, most marriages end in divorce because the same people keep getting remarried and re-divorced. And again, I'm not suggesting that those people are somehow bad people, because if you're in a rotten marriage, the right thing to do is to get out of it. Believe me, I have a brother that marriage was a disaster. We knew it was bad when on his wedding night, he called us into the room, we all have our tuxes on, and he looked at my brother and me. So my oldest brother was getting married. He looked at his 2 younger brothers, me and my other brother, and said, "Am I making a mistake?" And of course, my brother and I were like, no, she's great. And of course, to me, it's like, yep, the fact that you have to ask that question means this is not going to go well. And of course it didn't, right? It didn't go well. So I'm well aware of that. What you're looking at is a map of the world, and the darker, the more common divorce is. So if you're like me, what you do is you look at your home country and you think, oh boy, right? But you got to be careful here. Why are you looking at a high divorce rate as a bad thing? Maybe what you should be doing instead is saying, what the crap? Only 10% get divorced in parts of Europe and Asia? Why? And the answer sometimes is you can't get a divorce. It's illegal to get a divorce. So that miserable wife or that miserable husband is stuck because laws forbid you. Whereas we live in a free society where either party can initiate divorce proceedings. In some parts of the world, it's only the man that can initiate divorce proceedings. The wife has no rights at all. That's not true in our country. You can go to a lawyer by yourself and say, I'm done with this, and the proceedings can go forth. So maybe we need to look at it a slightly different way. And that last bullet there is something that's sort of interesting in American society, and that is, I would argue, it's not really seen as a bad thing. If I were to ask any of you, I'm not, but if I were to say how many of you are in a divorce situation, right? You live or something like that, I'm sure several of you would raise your hands. And if this were to happen 60 years ago, there would be, oh, did you see it? Whereas today, it'd be like, yeah, so big deal. Divorce is something that has greater social acceptance. Now, I'm not saying it's something to be celebrated. You're divorced too! Me too! Yay! It's just not seen as a big deal anymore. Even when I was your age, it was sort of a hush-hush sort of thing. Any questions here? Let's keep going. No need to take any notes on this. It's just kind of an interesting trend. If you took world history and crunched it down into the last 100, 200 years, the last 2 centuries, and pretended the entire population was 100 people. Okay? Now, before we start looking at this kind of interesting series of charts, how many of you follow the news, right? You're kind of aware of that there's this stuff going on, right? There's some Russia investigation going on. Somebody's getting named to the Supreme Court. A woman came along and said, he sexually molested me 30 years ago. Are we aware that this stuff is going on, that there's the news going on? Okay. It seems like the news is bad. Bad news, bad news, bad news. The world's going to end. The North Koreans are nuts. And the Russians are cheating on elections. Our president's corrupt. And by the way, I'm not suggesting any of this is true, but it seems like the news is bad. And I'm here to brighten your day. Do you know that there are fewer people in extreme poverty than ever? Right? 200 years ago, everybody was poor. Everyone ate rotten food. Nobody lived past the age of 40. Well, okay, some did. Moses. But the life expectancy was much, much lower. But thanks to improvements in the way we live, extreme poverty means you don't even have food, clothing, shelter. You know, think about what it means to be poor in America. What does that mean? It means you only have one cell phone. And, you know, you only maybe have 2 meals a day because it's provided for you free at school. What percent of the people at this school, like around half, get their lunches for free? Because Somerset is sort of a poorer population. Come in. Poverty is just different today than it used to be. Okay. Did you know that we are more literate than ever? 300 years ago, nobody knew how to read. Why do you need to know how to read? So you can operate that shovel? Would you be looking at the shovel like, Jimmy, I don't get what this thing does. Well, let's just read about it. Grab handle it. Oh, I get it. You look at it and say, grab that thing. Shovel, right? We are more literate than ever. More people know how to read and write today than ever. Okay? And that's basic education and literacy. We are freer than ever. 300 years ago, 400 years ago, you lived under the tutelage of a king who was named by God. You had nothing to do with the decision of that being your leader. Today, in more parts of the world, there's more choice in who your leader is going to be. We are healthier than ever, thanks in large part to good public health. We've eliminated so many diseases that used to ravage. Does anyone know what the Black Death was? The bubonic plague? If they had used this thing called soap, that would have taken care of it. Okay? They did not understand that what you do is wash your hands after you go poo. Oh, you wash your hands. Oh, but now we've succeeded in teaching people, wash your hands. Oh, I mean, you do know, right, that during the Civil War, surgeons would take the saw and amputate your leg and then go to the next person and amputate his leg. And what that doctor just did was kill both of them. Because whatever disease that guy had, this guy now has. And then one day, a woman, during the Civil War, by the way, said, you should wash those things. Oh, wash those things. Then amputate. The number one killer of soldiers during the Civil War were doctors who tried to save the life. If you had a choice in the Civil War between taking a risk with your injury and just heading for the hills or going to a hospital, that was the better choice. You had a better chance of survival. Like, I'm good. Okay.
Peyton Brock to the office, please. Peyton Brock.
I don't like the way she said Peyton. Is that a question? Two more topics here, and then we'll shift gears. We, again, are looking at American society and two increasing trends that are true in American society, and that is the acceptance of gay marriage. Now, right now, I am not telling you how you should feel about gay marriage. You will never, ever hear me telling any of you that your opinion is wrong. And by God, don't let anybody in this school or ever tell you your opinion is wrong. No, opinions can't be wrong. Now, let's back up. Can you have the opinion that the sun is made of cheese? No, that's not an opinion. You're a moron. That's not an opinion. You can't have an opinion that 2 + 2 is 9. You're just wrong. That's something else. But you're perfectly free in here and to say that our president is the best thing since sliced bread, or I think our president is morally bankrupt. Fine. You can have that opinion. Right? This is America. Okay. But I am telling you this, that it is increasingly accepted in our country. Gay marriage is an increasing, and it's an interesting thing, it is a generational thing. Your generation is more accepting of gay marriage than my generation, who's more accepting of gay marriage than my parents' generation. As the generations move through, gay marriage will, if trends continue, become not universally accepted. There will always be a segment that never accepts it, but increasingly accepted. It's the same thing with interracial marriage. In the 1950s, the idea of a black guy and a white girl, get a rope. But today, so big deal. Who cares? What difference does it make? Okay. By the way, again, I'm not telling you have to think that way. This is a weird freedom, but this is true. You have the freedom to be a raging racist. Go ahead. Now, what I'm not telling you to do is go burn crosses in people's yards. Don't go lynching. But you can have that opinion. This is America. Go ahead. What a great freedom. Okay. And then the second trend that is increasingly common is living together before you're married. 100 years ago? Oh, no. But increasingly today, people live together before they get married, questioning what is marriage? I mean, what is that thing? Marriage, why do we need it? And there are people that say, well, it's a religious ceremony. Great. And then there are others that say, well, we need to get married because our insurance is affected by marriage. Increasingly, though, this is becoming more and more common. Companies are saying, who's your buddy? Who's the other one in this little relationship? That's who will insure, whoever that is. And it might be your wife or your husband, but it might not be. And that's becoming more and more of a thing. So the increasing trend of people living together. Any questions on this? That is it. So I'm not even sure what you wrote. Maybe nothing. Okay. Very good. So now what's going to happen is I'm going to end this bad boy.